The year was 1923, and the air inside the Crosman Brothers Seed Company in Rochester, New York felt heavy with dust, cold, and quiet defeat. The modest storefront on Monroe Avenue smelled of burlap, fertilizer, and the damp bite of an upstate winter that refused to fade. Wooden floorboards creaked under the boots of farmers who made their living from the soil. But each week fewer boots crossed the threshold and less money changed hands. The open ledger on the counter told the story in red ink and narrow margins, a record of a trade slipping toward extinction. The Crosman family were not industrial giants or visionaries chasing global influence. They were merchants selling hope. A seed was a promise of a future harvest, a silent agreement between man and earth. In the early 1920s, that promise was collapsing, not because of frost or drought, but because of a relentless plague. Farmers complained about thieves in the fields, rabbits, rats, woodchucks, crows, an army of pests devouring crops before they could sprout. Every sack of seeds sold felt like ammunition for a battle the farmers were losing. Customers walked in resigned, knowing half their planting would feed rodents instead of their families. The Crosmans realized they were becoming obsolete. A future could not be sold if the present could not be defended. In desperation, they turned to a local mechanical tinkerer named William Milan, an eccentric inventor who worked in a workshop filled with grease, ozone, and clanking metal. He had no interest in toys or novelty gadgets. He was obsessed with compressed air. Milan believed the spring, piston BB guns of the era were weak, inaccurate, and loud. He envisioned something different, a pneumatic rifle that used a pump system to compress air into a sealed chamber until it held enough force to drive a lead projectile through solid wood. The Crosmans struck a deal that would transform their fate. They would not only sell seeds, they would sell protection. The Milan rifle would be marketed as agricultural equipment, a tool for defending crops. The prototype was unlike anything on the dime store shelves. It had a heavy rifled steel barrel for stability, a walnut stock carved from genuine American wood, and it fired a .22 caliber lead pellet designed to hit hard. The defining feature was the pump. The user had to work for each shot, building pressure stroke by stroke, feeling resistance rise as power accumulated inside the metal chamber. With a few pumps it could dent a tin can. With 10 it could drop a rabbit at 30 yards. When the Crosmans placed the rifle on the seed shop counter, everything changed. Farmers stopped looking at grain sacks and focused on the steel in their hands. They felt its weight, pumped the handle, aimed at the back wall, and fired. The sound was not a bang, but a sharp pneumatic breath, followed by the heavy impact of lead on wood. It was quiet, precise, and deadly. The response was immediate. Farmers ignored the seeds and asked for the rifle. Inventory of seeds gathered dust, while rifles sold faster than Milan could build them. The Crosman family realized they had misunderstood their own business. They thought they were selling growth and nurture, but the market demanded power and protection. The seed shop became a chrysalis, and in 1924 the Crosman Rifle Company emerged. Shelves of grain were replaced with gun racks. Concern for frost gave way to obsession with ballistics. Unlike competitors born from toy-making traditions, Crosman was forged from agricultural desperation. Its products were tools before they were toys, engineered to be harder, faster, and more lethal. They sold the satisfaction of a cleared garden, not the romance of the Wild West. Farmers entered the shop looking for a way to grow corn and left armed with high-powered air rifles. Backyards turned into hunting grounds, and the rhythmic pumping of air chambers replaced the quiet creak of seed sacks. That sound spread across the nation, signaling the rise of a new kind of shooter who needed no gunpowder, only compressed air and determination. The move from the cramped Rochester shop to the industrial complex in Fairport, New York marked the coming of age of an empire. By the mid-20th century, Crosman Arms operated a massive manufacturing fortress filled with steel, brick, welding haze, stamping presses, and the scent of cutting fluid. Engineers and ballisticians worked in pressed shirts and ties, obsessing over valve timing, compression ratios, and barrel metallurgy. They viewed spring piston guns as crude and primitive, while they pursued the elegance of pneumatics. The core philosophy of Crosman became variable power. Unlike spring guns that delivered the same force with every trigger pull, Crosman rifles gave the shooter control. Power could be adjusted with each pump, turning a simple air rifle into a precision tool that reflected the will and judgment of the person holding it. It was quiet, low stress, and accurate, yet in the field a shooter could pump the gun 6, 7, 8, or even 10 times to build real power. This variable power system transformed the air rifle into a lesson in physics. It taught that energy had to be earned. The air in the chamber acted as a battery, and the shooter's arm became the generator. The first pump felt effortless, the second smooth. But by the 8th or 9th stroke the resistance grew intense. Air pushed back. The lever became harder to close, and the shooter felt potential violence building inside the reservoir, inch by cubic inch. A tactile bond formed between human and machine that a simple spring mechanism could never create. In 1966, this philosophy took physical form in a legendary object, the Crosman Model 760 Pumpmaster. If the Red Ryder was the Model T of the airgun world, cheap, reliable, and everywhere, the Crosman 760 was the muscle car. It was sleek, aggressive, and designed to resemble the high-powered hunting rifles locked behind glass cabinets in gun shops. It did not use a cowboy lever, but a bolt, a design choice that mimicked military sniper rifles and deer guns. Loading it involved pulling the bolt handle back, hearing a mechanical click, engaging a magnetic tip that grabbed a steel BB, pushing the bolt forward, and locking it down. This deliberate ritual felt technical and professional, slowing the process and turning every shot into a serious event, rather than a game. The 760 became an immediate sensation and a defining artifact of American suburbs in the 1970s. It bridged childhood and adolescence, a graduation gift that signaled trust and responsibility. It was genuinely lethal to the small world it inhabited, a precise tool for pest control in the hands of a skilled marksman. The 1970s were the golden age of the backyard hunter, when woodlots and creek beds still existed on the edges of suburban life. A boy with a 760 was king of his domain, not playing but patrolling. The rifled barrel and adjustable sights reflected the shooter's skill, leaving no excuses for missed shots. The engineers in Fairport built the gun like a tank. The receiver was heavy die-cast metal with a deep black finish. The stock was solid and weighty, and even later synthetic versions were thick and durable. A 1970s 760 felt cold and substantial, with no rattling except for the unmistakable sound of BBs stored in the internal reservoir, a maraca of ammunition. Its success was staggering, with more than 16 million units sold, making it one of the best-selling rifles in history. It created a distinct youth subculture. The Crosman kid wore camouflage from surplus stores, shot from prone positions, controlled breathing, and waited for the perfect moment. The Fairport factory ran nonstop to meet demand, filled with the constant low-frequency drone of pneumatic testing. Engineers were celebrated for bottling the hunting experience and selling it at an affordable price, achieving a perfect balance of form and function. This marked the peak of the empire, with executives watching truckloads of pumpmasters heading to stores across the continent. They believed the desire for quality, weight, and power was permanent. The slogan, "Power without powder," was not just marketing. It was a promise that engineering and mechanical advantage could replace gunpowder. By the end of the 1970s, Crosman sat on the throne of the air gun world, confident in a future that seemed limitless. They were masters of the backyard, unaware that the era of steel and wood was about to be dismantled by cost-cutting decisions. The plastic revolution loomed like a storm, but inside the factory metal still struck metal with confidence. The decline arrived quietly in the 1980s, carried by corporate executives who had never hunted a rabbit. The family-owned, engineer-driven armory gave way to conglomerate ownership. Crosman became a line item on a balance sheet, traded between investment groups, starting with the Coleman Company and others that followed. A new philosophy took over, replacing engineering excellence with cost efficiency. Meetings shifted from discussions about accuracy and performance to debates about reducing expenses. The guiding principle changed from building the best product to creating the cheapest acceptable one. The material that symbolized this shift was Zettel, a glass-filled nylon marketed as a miracle polymer. It was cheaper to produce, easier to mold, and far less expensive than metal. Corporate orders mandated the redesign of the Crosman 760 Pumpmaster, the crown jewel of the empire, under the banner of modernization, signaling a fundamental transformation of the company's identity. This was not modernization. It was an autopsy. The first casualty was the receiver. For 2 decades, the body of the 760 had been a solid block of die-cast zinc or steel, heavy and cold to the touch, gripping the barrel and pump mechanism with rigid authority. It was a chassis built to endure abuse. The redesign replaced that solid metal core with 2 halves of plastic joined in a clamshell. A seam line ran straight down the middle of the rifle, the scar of injection molding. Precision pins and welding were abandoned in favor of visible Phillips head screws scattered across the side like blemishes, breaking the sleek lines of the original and constantly reminding the user that the gun was nothing more than 2 pieces of plastic screwed together. The most devastating change came to the bolt. The original bolt action was the soul of the rifle, a piece of metal that clicked back, slid forward, and locked down with mechanical authority. The corporate redesign replaced it with a plastic nub. Pulling the new bolt produced no satisfying click, only a gritty scrape, plastic sliding against plastic. It felt temporary and cheap. Stripping away the sense of power and replacing it with the feeling of a toy. The tactile message shifted from confidence and responsibility to imitation and pretense. The degradation extended into the barrel. Earlier models used rifled steel barrels that spun the pellet for accuracy, a process that required time and skilled tooling. To save money, the rifling was removed and replaced with smoothbore steel. Without rifling, The projectile wobbled and drifted, turning accuracy into chance beyond short distances. The 760 shifted from a precision instrument into a scattershot device, teaching randomness instead of skill. The weight disappeared. The original Pumpmaster had reassuring heft that required strength to hold steady. The plastic version felt hollow and feather-light, echoing when tapped like a cheap container. That lack of mass affected stability, making the gun twitchy and harder to control. Even in an air gun, weight mattered. The packaging changed as well. The Golden Era rifle came in illustrated cardboard boxes that felt like gifts and heirlooms. The 1980s brought blister packs, shrink-wrapped plastic hanging on retail pegs beside batteries and tools. Opening the package destroyed it, leaving nothing to keep or cherish. The gun became a disposable product, rather than a crafted object. This shift mirrored the retail transformation. Local hardware stores with knowledgeable owners gave way to big box chains demanding lower prices and higher volume. Accuracy, trigger feel, and craftsmanship no longer mattered. Price points dictated design, forcing Crosman to strip cost and character from its flagship product. Engineers watched their steel components replaced with plastic replicas and listened as the solid pump action turned into a hollow rattle. The tragedy of the plastic era was a betrayal of trust. For decades, the Crosman name promised durability and longevity, something a father could pass down through generations. Plastic guns could not be repaired, restored, or cherished. When they broke, they were discarded. The cycle shifted from maintain and inherit to buy, break, replace. The Crosman kid of the 1990s held a rifle that looked aggressive and tactical, but lacked substance. Power was diluted, respect disappeared, and plastic invited careless handling. Profits increased, production surged, and plastic rifles flooded superstores. But the spirit of the original seed shop and the idea of the rifle as a serious rural tool vanished. The sound of the plastic action marked an empire cashing in its legacy piece by piece. The collapse of the Crosman empire was not financial but cultural. The company expanded and acquired competitors, but its soul dissolved. The environment that created the Crosman kid also disappeared. Suburban landscapes densified, woodlots vanished, fences grew higher, and tolerance for backyard shooting faded. The free, range childhood of the pump action era ended, replaced by suspicion and regulation. What was once a normal sound of suburban life became a reason to call authorities, marking the end of an era defined by freedom, craftsmanship, and compressed air power. The cultural perception of the gun shifted from a tool of discipline and husbandry into a symbol of danger. The air rifle that once served as a bridge to adulthood became a pariah object. Crosman, trapped in a shrinking cultural space, made a desperate pivot. If the backyard hunter lifestyle could no longer be sold, because backyards had effectively become no-fire zones, the company would sell something else. It would sell the tactical fantasy. Engineers in Fairport were told to abandon the aesthetics of traditional hunting rifles and design guns that looked like the military weapons seen on the evening news and in video games. Wood grain disappeared forever. The classic lines of the Model 760 were overshadowed by a new generation of air guns shaped like modern assault rifles. These designs were aggressive, covered in jagged Picatinny rails, meant to hold accessories the guns did not need, fitted with fake magazines and rattling collapsible stocks, and styled to mimic the silhouette of the AR-15. This marked a fatal psychological shift. The original Crosman Pumpmaster was a tool that aspired to real-world responsibility and skill. The new tactical air guns were props that encouraged role-play rather than discipline. By making the guns look more militarized to appeal to a generation raised on shooters and war games, Crosman made them more alarming to parents and neighbors. The company accelerated its own exile from the backyard. Tactical black rifles could no longer be used casually without attracting police attention, turning what was meant to preserve relevance into indoor toys, confined to basements. The silent chamber symbolized something deeper than quiet neighborhoods. It marked the death of the pump. The pneumatic ritual of pumping was the soul of Crosman's legacy. Each stroke represented effort, investment, and control. Power was earned, and the relationship between shooter and machine was physical and deliberate. Modern Crosman products shifted toward KO and pre-charged pneumatic systems, where disposable cartridges replaced muscle and effort. On the surface, this was progress, allowing rapid fire with minimal work, but the convenience erased discipline. The shot became cheap, effortless, and disposable. The philosophy of earning power was replaced by power without effort. The modern Crosman shooter became a consumer of compressed gas, rather than a generator of pressure. The corporation itself transformed into a sterile brand entity. The Crosman name, once tied to family pride in Rochester, became a sticker in a corporate portfolio, merged and rebranded under umbrella companies. The Fairport factory still existed, but the identity of Crosman dissolved into a catalog of imported plastic products. The legacy split into two realities. One existed among collectors who rebuilt vintage models, preserving the old philosophy in workshops and forums. The other existed on retail shelves filled with blister-packed plastic guns in garish colors, designed to compete with digital distractions. These modern products felt weightless, crude, and disposable, shadows of the machines that once defined a generation. The Crosman story mirrored the broader loss of connection to the physical world. It began in a seed shop dealing with soil, pests, and survival. It produced tools made of steel and wood, powered by human effort. It ended in a digital era where backyards were restricted, pests were ignored, and guns became plastic props powered by disposable cartridges. The chamber became silent not because of quiet technology, but because the guiding philosophy died. The seed planted in 1923 grew into a powerful legacy that was neglected, dismantled, and reshaped into hollow plastic forms. The Crosman Kid disappeared, replaced by a user who consumed cartridges without effort or patience. The empire of air emptied itself of meaning, leaving only quiet suburbs filled with sealed homes and the hum of machines, where the sound of the pump was gone and the culture that created it faded into silence.